Here we go. Sportsbook betting inside today. Pauly and Teddy. Wednesday, September 26th. SBR picks. All the betting news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. I'm at Real Sportsbet on Twitter. He's at Teddy_covers. A story you will not believe in 5 minutes, and then we'll get to big game breakdown. 4 football games, including the monster game tomorrow on Fox with the Rams at home against the Vikings. We'll get to all that coming up. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. 2 bad beats to start in baseball. You got to be sick and hate yourself to bet baseball. That's what Nick Bogdanovich says from William Hill. Indians and under becomes White Sox and over. Indians $2 up to $2.20, and the under 8.5 bet up to 9. But 4-2 bottom of the ninth, the White Sox get 3 and walk it off, Teddy. 5-4 in that one, and the A's plus 105. How about plus the run and a half? Led 8-5 in the 8th. Mariners tie it. A 2-run walk-off in the 11th. 10-8 final. The A's were 68-0 this year when leading after 7.
Well, we could say that Oakland was due. You're not going to win every game forever when leading after 7 innings, but obviously you've got an 8-5 lead in the 8th. You're plus 1.5. You got to be feeling pretty good about that wager. Didn't come through for Oakland. Tough beat for Cleveland and their backers. Tough beat for underbackers. Tough beat for A's backers. But let's be honest, Pauly. Last week of the season, we talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show. It's tough, man. It's tough to beat baseball the final week. The whole American League didn't have overnight lines last night because the bookmakers don't know who's playing. They don't know who's going to be closing. They don't know who's coming in out of the pen. They don't know how long the starters are going. Not an easy week to be betting baseball. That being said, if you bet it last night, hopefully you weren't on the wrong end of either of those brutal beats. Yeah, exactly. Nick Bogdanovich, great quote. If you're betting baseball, you have to hate yourself at least a little bit.
You got that right. Bad for the look at this. This got to, here's the Nats, 330, got to 440 at the South Point here in Vegas. Unbelievable. It was the last start for Scherzer. Wanted to get the 10 strikeouts that he got. They win 9-4. Huge steam in that one. And the Astros, they clinched the division, 170 up to 190. 18-5 now in September, and 54-22 on the road. Unbelievable.
Yeah, this Astros team, the American League playoffs are going to be fun. You can tell already. I keep talking Cleveland, and then you're like, look at Boston, look at Houston, look at whoever's going to win the Yankees-A's playing game. It's going to be fun. But bottom line for the bookmakers last night, Nats a popular favorite. They cash in on the run line. Astros a popular favorite. They cash in on the run line. Obviously, neither of those a particularly good result for bookmakers, both here in Las Vegas and around the country.
All right, and 2 bad bets. How about this? How about the Cubs and Dodgers in the play-in game? It could happen. Cubs 140 up to 175. Lost again to the Pirates. Shutout. They've scored 1 run in the series, and that was a home run by Hamels. And the Dodgers 195 up to 240. They lost to Arizona 4-3. They have a half-game lead over the Rockies. Even though the Dodgers are in first place, they have the 4th worst ROI. Cubs are going to make the playoffs, but they only have a game and a half-game lead over the Brewers, and the Cubs close with the Cardinals. I mean, this is going to get wild here. The scenarios in the National League, we could get 2 play-in games for the division on Monday, or we could get a play-in game that decides the second wild card. We know this. The Brewers are in. The Cubs are in, but everything else is up for grabs.
Sure, and the American League playoff race has been fairly nondescript. Let's call it what it is. Boring. There's been nothing going on all summer, by and large, with the exception of Oakland's surge to earn a wild card spot. In the National League, things have been interesting all year, all September, and they stay interesting down the stretch, which, for a baseball schedule that doesn't have a lot of marquee games the final week of the season, you think about the Week 17 NFL matchups or game number 82 in the NBA when there's always playoff implication on the line. And, baseball just hasn't had that much of that for the final week of the regular season. That being said, lots of money on the Cubs last night. Big action on Chicago. Lots of money on the Dodgers last night. We're talking about 35, 40, 45 cent moves on both of those games. The bookmakers beat the bettors, and they were very pleased with the Cubs and Dodgers going down last night.
And if I'm Bud Black, I just tell my team, hey, we win out, we're in the playoffs. It's that simple. We have, what is it now? 5 home games left. Just take care of business there. Troubling news yesterday, Teddy. I get a phone call last night from a close friend. Were you hanging out at the Bellagio Sunday night, he says, about 8:30. I go, no, I'm in bed. I got to get up at 2 in the morning. What do you think? Someone is walking around town impersonating me, saying his name's Paul. They call him Pauly, and he works at the South Point Hotel Casino. He's a sports commentator, and he's inviting cocktail waitresses back to his house where he has a pool, and he's playing blackjack and offering to give the cocktail waitress half if he happens to win the hand. Hope he's having better success with the ladies than I am. But Teddy, should I hire a private investigator? What's going on here? Because you notice in the first time the guy's tried it, as luck would have it, he hit on my buddy's girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. When someone's walking around impersonating you, it's a little bit weird. I mean, that's how I first got on Twitter. Was someone was out there tweeting as Teddy Covers. That's why I have Teddy_Covers as my Twitter handle. Because when I first heard about it, I'm like, oh, someone's like, oh, I saw what you were tweeting yesterday. I'm like, I didn't tweet that. Did some investigative work, contacted Twitter, actually found the guy who was impersonating me, and he apologized, said he was just doing it a lark and all of that, and ended up getting me on Twitter fairly early. But it's not cool to have someone running around, especially when he's going around hitting on women. Someone, hey, I'm Pauly, I'm hitting on women. So if some guy out there is hitting on your girlfriend and claiming he's Pauly Howard, it's not Pauly Howard. In terms of a PI, yeah, the cops aren't going to investigate that. Someone say, oh yeah, someone's walking around claiming they're me. The police will not help you in that matter. If you want to get to the bottom of it, probably got to hire a PI. Which, I mean, there's plenty of them in Vegas. You'll probably find who it is. But thank your lucky stars, he was hitting on your girlfriend's friend as opposed to some random stranger. But you're right, Pauly. If he did it once, he's probably done it twice, 3 times, who knows how many times. Impersonating Pauly Howard. You can say this much, buddy. At least you're big enough, a big enough star now that people are impersonating you. Cheers.
We're going to set up a sting operation. We're going to try to get him next time. Pass along all the photos to the cocktail waitresses over there and the bartenders. My God, I hope he's treating them right. Imagine if he's talking dirty to them nonstop. It reflects on me too. Holy shit, unbelievable! I don't know. I was speechless. I didn't know what to do when I got the phone call. All right, here we go. What a way to start the Fox schedule. Tomorrow, Rams 6.5, 49 at home against the Vikings. The Rams are kicking ass and taking names. 3-0 straight up and 3-0 ATS. They are 2-1 to win the Super Bowl here at the Westgate in Vegas. Unbelievable. They took a $50,000 bet earlier in the week on the Rams to win the Super Bowl, and I think it was $25,000 to win the NFC. No Talib, no Peters. A big deal. The Vikings get Cook back, but I'll ask you, Teddy. The Bills, as 17-point dogs, dominated that game, won by 21, and the Vikings couldn't move the ball at home, Teddy.
Yeah, that's the scary thing. I mean, there's a lot of scary things to talk about for Minnesota right now. We'll get to LA in a minute. But for the Vikings, okay, you fall asleep early. Buffalo comes in and punches you in the mouth. You're down a couple scores. You expect good teams to dig deep in that spot. And you know what the Vikings did last week? Down 10-0, then it's 17-0, then it's 24-0. There's no comeback. There's no digging deep. They had nothing in the tank. Now, it's a short week. They're traveling across the country. They had nothing in the tank on Sunday. And I'm trying to think, when's the last time I saw Minnesota play a good game? Well, gee, they didn't dominate in week 1. In week 2, they're very, very lucky. And I had Minnesota in week 1 against San Fran. I was lucky to catch that ticket, flat out. They were not the right side. In week 2, if it wasn't for Cousins squeaking a ball into the double coverage in a window that's about this big, they lose that game in regulation, 29-21 to Green Bay. I mean, literally, Cousins made a crazy throw, probably wasn't a well-advised throw, and it got in there somehow. Oh, the Vikings are fine. So they're supposed to lose that game. And then last week, a no-show against Buffalo. I've got my concerns about Minnesota right now, and it starts, as you mentioned. Yeah, they got Dalvin Cook back this week. Doesn't matter if the offensive line can't protect the quarterback and can't punch holes for the running backs. And that Vikings offensive line has been flat out weak in early season play. If it stays weak, they can get blown out on Thursday night. It wouldn't shock me in the slightest because when you look at the Rams, this team is scary, Pauly, downright scary.
They'll kill you, and then they'll go to work on you, right? Ocean's 11 line. You have to ask the question, are the Vikings any good? You're right. I watched that entire game week 1. Kittle dropped a touchdown wide open. Morris fumbled at the 2-yard line. And on the pick 6, the receiver ran the wrong route. And the Packers, we know, appear to be a bit of a fraud as they couldn't beat the Redskins, got carved up by Alex Smith, and needed a miracle to beat the Bears. So that's the tie. And then what happened against Buffalo? You got the Everson Griffin debacle, too, about he's jumping, mental health evaluation. They're taking him to the hospital. He jumps out of the ambulance. You got that scenario going on as well. Cook will help him. They haven't even tried to run the ball the last 2 weeks either. And you're right, they couldn't protect Cousins. As far as the Rams, well, the Vikings look to pass and throw on them, but you got to worry about Donald and Sue protecting Cousins as well. And you got Thielen and Diggs to do some damage maybe. It's a huge loss now with no Talib and Peters. But can the Vikings, and the defense has been a major disappointment too. Can the Josh Allen move the ball on them? Can they slow down Goff and Gurley and Cooks and Woods and all these weapons that the Rams have? And Kupp, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams are a team that I have no interest in stepping in front of right now. I really don't. And if I'm playing this game, I can only look at the Rams side because A, I'm not convinced the Vikings are that good, and B, I am convinced the Rams are that good. And when you're talking about these Thursday night games with the travel situation, it's very difficult for the road team, and we've seen that already on multiple occasions this season, where the rough starts or rough finishes. The Jets had the rough finish the previous week. It was the Ravens with the rough start. But we got to talk about Peters and Talib here, because when you start talking about, hey, we're going to lay 6.5, and this line looks like it's going to 7. It might go to 7 by kickoff. And, oh, by the way, the team catching points is playing against an opponent with not one, but 2 former Pro Bowlers at cornerback who are going to be sitting this week. That's a concern. A, it leaves the back door open for Minnesota if they fall behind. And B, when you talk about that Vikings passing game, it's the only part of their offense that has worked so far. And for all the success that the Rams have had this season, they haven't faced a defense like Minnesota's yet. I agree. The Vikings defense has been a minor disappointment. I would say they've been good, not great. We'll see what the Rams offense can do against at least a good defense. Maybe not a great one. Fascinating game, Paul. Really is. But as of this time, I don't have a wager. If I'm playing, I could only lay, but I'm not interested in LA in this price range.
It can be both. You can have a good team. You can be an excellent team, but to play a soft schedule early. And the Rams have beat the Raiders, Arizona, but the Chargers are good. I think the Chargers are going to be a 9-10 win team, and they took them out as well. All right, Thursday, ESPN, 5 o'clock Pacific, Miami at home to North Carolina. 18.5 and 55.5 the total. Hey, it finally happened. Rozier out, Perry in, quarterback change. Miami's got some good mojo going here. They had a 31-point lead against Florida International, who came in through the back door late, and they blew that. But it appears to be a different offense since the LSU fiasco.
Yeah, sure. And we talk about N'Kosi Perry, who is expected to get the start here. We may see Malik Rozier coming off the bench. We may not. Perry, certainly statistically, has been much better than Rozier. Perry, of course, the freshman. Rozier, the senior, redshirt freshman for Perry. Rozier is a senior. But, Rozier is 51.2% completions. That ranks 113th in the country, whereas Perry's at 67% for the season. All the talk is that Perry's taking the first string snaps this week. And while Rick isn't saying for sure that it's Perry, looks like Perry. Offense coordinator Thomas Brown. I think both of these guys have really good attitudes. I think they root for each other, celebrate with each other when guys have success. Obviously, everyone wants to play. I don't care what role you had, whether you're a starter or a second string guy, you want to have more reps. They've done a really good job of coming together, helping each other out, and the attitude has been good. Of course, Miami's punting game hasn't been good. What's going on with Zach Fiegels? The guy's had great practices. He gets in the game, and he's shanking right now. But we're talking about laying 18.5 with Miami. You don't want those shank punts in those kind of situations. You're going to want cheap scores for the North Carolina Tar Heels.
Well, Carolina's terrible. So you had the suspensions early on. You can address what's going to happen at quarterback here in a second. They lost to Cal to start on the road. They were down 17-0 at the half. 2 late touchdowns. They got the money in that one. Books actually got middle on that result. Then they went to East Carolina, who keep in mind, we're coming off a loss to North Carolina A&T, okay? And they beat North Carolina 41-19. East Carolina routed them, and then they beat Pitt last week 38-35. So Fedora on the hot seat here. It's not a good team. What's going to happen at quarterback?
Yeah, but I mean, the fact is, after the East Carolina debacle and after the game got canceled the following week, they came back last week and played well. against Pitt. And certainly on the offensive side of the football, they played well. Defensively, UNC may have some struggles against Miami's speed. I'll just put it that way. There's a reason this line's sitting at 18.5. But at QB, there's 7 guys coming back from suspensions from North Carolina this week, including Surratt, who was their starting quarterback last year. Then he got hurt late in the season. Then he got suspended with the other guys for selling the team-issued sneakers on eBay or wherever it was they sell it. But, Surratt started 7 games for this team last year. Then Elliott came in and was a starter earlier this season. No surprise that we see both quarterbacks in this one. But the bottom line, North Carolina is going to have to run the football. Ohio State transfer Antonio Williams, a career-high 114 rushing yards last week and 2 TDs. They don't have balance. This one could get ugly for North Carolina because I don't trust that defense to get a whole lot of stops. They're going to have to trade scores with Miami to stay in this ball game.
All right, let's sneak in one more. Friday, 5 o'clock Pacific, ESPN, Memphis and Tulane. Memphis is 14, 67 the total on the road. Memphis had the one loss. Remember, White, they couldn't throw the ball in that monsoon against Navy when they got beat. Henderson leads the nation in rushing yards. It went almost 800 yards in 8 touchdowns. They've blown out a couple opponents so far. Now they're going on the road. It's an interesting angle here, at least handicap. Tulane's 1-3, but they're playing a second conference game already.
Yeah, and of course, we're a little short on time, so I will put UCLA, Colorado in tomorrow's show. But for today, we got to break down this Tulane and Memphis game. Listen to the confidence, the quotes coming out of Tulane's locker room. This is from Darius Bradwell, the running back. In the locker room, we're all talking about needing a win. That's our mentality. We know this is an important game to start the conference. That's the energy we have on Friday. We're going to come out starting fast. That's what I want to hear from a team that's 2 touchdown home underdogs. But you start to look at this series, that Tulane defense had no success against Memphis. Once in the last 4 years, it's been a competitive game. That was the last time Memphis came to visit. They only won by 10 at Tulane. Every other meeting, the other 3 meetings the last 4 years, have been 4 touchdown plus Memphis blowouts because the Tigers' offense has significant speed edges against the Green Wave defense. And that's been the case, like I said, in every recent meeting. Except
I had that backwards. I was thinking UAB was UAB's in Conference USA. It's the second conference game from Memphis here, so I had that one backwards. But lost to Wake in overtime at home, the win over Nichols, and then lost at UAB, and then routed last week by Ohio State, 49-6 in that one. So interesting handicap here as well. What do you any thoughts on the total or the side?
Yeah, I mean, just one last quick quote, because this is one of those read between the lines. All right. Willie Fritz, you've got to make sure these guys understand this is a long season. I've got some stuff up there on the video board. 1, do your job. Quit worrying about what other people are doing. Just do what you're supposed to do to the best of your ability. When you talk about make sure you understand this is a long season, what's read between the lines say there? It means Fritz saying, if we get blown out this week, I want you to show up again next week. Our season's not over yet. That's a big concern for the Tulane Green Wave. When it comes to how they're going to hang on Friday night. From a side or total perspective here, I can only lay, given the series history. And Memphis, this is a scary-looking offense. Total-wise, just comes down to whether Tulane's going to be good enough to score against the Memphis defense. Memphis, not a great defensive squad. They get their success, obviously, by putting up points in bunches.
Could be a big night for White. Remember the first game, the freshman Hartman for Wake threw all over Tulane. Had a big game, and they won in overtime. All right, I had a loser with the Cardinals, so I forfeit my right to pick here. What do you want to go with play of the day?
All right, play of the day. Let's go back to a game we talked about just a moment ago. We're talking about this North Carolina-Miami game. And I said, hey, we have a potential here for points in bunches. I like the looks of this Miami offense. I don't like the looks of the Tar Heel defense. And we're talking about a total 55.5. That seems a little bit low for a North Carolina-Miami game. Let's look for the Hurricanes and the Tar Heels to get up and over the total. Thursday night, ESPN Showdown, Miami and North Carolina over. That's our play of the day.
All right, excellent. More college football tomorrow. Ohio State, Penn State, Stanford, Notre Dame. We could throw in some other games well. We'll touch on UCLA and Colorado from Friday night. We'll get to all that coming up. Sports Bet Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. All the betting news you need to know in less than 20 minutes. SBR picks. Low Shack in the bag up next. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends.